I mean, there's lots of reasons you'd be here, but like, what would be the magnet of what's on your mind when you think about showing up to family wellness?
I think this is absolutely critical for families today.
Yeah.
And I think, first of all, thank you for being here.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting it on.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. I look forward to, you've been here before, George, and we look forward to many more of these. I just think, as we go forward in, our life as parents and grandparents and kids and everybody in our country and in our culture today, and I just think it behooves us to admit, all of us, that there's something that we need healing for.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously Christ provides that healing, but there are many vessels that Jesus to work through. Therapists, clergy, our neighbor, our kids themselves, their parents, etc. I just think that the church is healthier when we look at this place as a place of healing and not hospital.
Mm-hmm.
I still too often encounter whenever I ask, I hear it all. I mean, marriage trouble, trouble with kids, trouble with whatever, substance abuse, things like this. And it's almost like when I ask somebody how they do it, I'm looking for, anybody, whenever I ask anybody in my church, how are you doing? I'm always looking for tons of stories.
Yeah.
But too often I still encounter people like, oh, everything's fine.
Yeah.
I'm like, look, I'm glad you're happy, and I'm glad everything's going good, and that doesn't mean that we can't enjoy our life. But I guess what I'm looking for is, what challenge can the church help out with?
Yeah, that's good.
And so family wellness, by extension, for the metropolis and for parish to parish, provides a role. And I hope to see, a lot more of this,
It's good.
in the future, whether it's you or us or
Yeah.
more people.
All
So
kinds of, yeah.
The more of this is going on, the healthier we are, and the more that we ourselves, so thank you for everybody for being here, the more we're admitting to ourselves, like, okay, I'm strong over here, where am I weak?
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna use some more healing.
Mm-hmm.
We're gonna use some support. And that's what we come to.
Yeah, good. Very good. Well said.
Long way there.
Yeah, that's good.
As Judith, my kids are in mid-20s. I'm not done parenting them yet.
Yeah.
So you're
Get a few resources.
education.
Yeah.
Uh,
That's good. No, yeah, right. It gets harder sometimes, yeah. Yeah, right.
Yeah, the thing about
Yeah.
them leading the,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. That's great.
Peter Rebel, mom of 3 teenagers, basically.
Mm.
This is 12.
Yeah.
This is 18. I was just like, when it did say face-to-face, heart-to-heart, which kind of moved me, because I was like, is that about honesty? Is that really talking about, like just the typical teenage stuff? And then you're like, oh, individuals, couples, 20 years married, and I hate my husband. So
Right.
I hate him, it's kind of a strong word, but you kind of lose connection because we've been raising kids for 20 years.
Yeah.
I don't even have anything to talk to him about.
Yeah.
Like what we talked about, algebra homework or horseback riding lessons.
Right.
What kid has pneumonia or
Yeah.
who ripped his jeans up at school. So I don't know.
Yep.
It's just-
No, that's well said.
Like, I don't, yeah.
That, if that could be almost like a blurb for a commercial for life in how it goes, and we catch a breath and go, yep, we're talking wellness, yeah, well, let's just put it, all kinds of places. I appreciate.
It's like when your game is on.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, yeah. Well, no, I love. Yeah, and he said that.
Yeah.
Okay, that's good. I love it. I love it. Yeah. That's well said. Yeah.
I'm Nicola, and I have a 14-year-old that
Okay.
and the family looks.
Yeah.
We really like the last emotional intelligence one.
Right on.
Our whole family was, I understand how you feel for like a good month.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah, right on. No, good to see you again.
It was a good one.
Right on.
My percentage of this, I love everything to do with family wellness. I think it's an area where there's so much room for us to provide help to everyone, to myself, and I'd love to see people get more engaged with it, with ideas. What can we do?
Yeah.
What can we provide? Because the back and forth conversation where all of a sudden you're not alone. You're like, oh, you're experiencing the same thing, so am I. All of a sudden you're not alone, and it just helps lift you
Yeah.
up.
So that's a big deal, even not only that individuals somehow find wellness, but to be in a community where we're helping each other and that even the not alone is a big difference between isolation in terms of what kind of mental wellness we could have. Yeah, you guys right here. Name and what brought you here.
I'm Barbara Friedel, and I've taught Sunday school for over 20 years here, and sometimes in class, things come up, we'll talk about well, right now I'm teaching for second grade. We'll talk about kids who are mean to each other at school, bullying, and we talk about the kids' siblings, and I see the look on their face change, like they kind of bear a burden even though they're so young. And it would be nice to kind of know how to respond
That's
to
interesting.
that better and in a Christian way.
Yeah.
You know, and we talk about that, but a lot has to do with family wellness.
Yeah.
Are you talking to your parents about this?
Yeah.
What you're upset about?
Interesting point because I'm seeing a lot of parallels, and it's almost like a powerful thing to think you're interacting with a first or second grader, and you realize they're carrying pain. And in that moment, you realize I want to do everything possible, but sometimes, do I have the tools, or how do I direct that, or do we have a community that can take time to talk about that, let alone a second grader, let alone a senior citizen, let alone whatever. I mean, so it really is, I think, that sometimes we forget that what we have in common is that we carry pain. And so it's a very powerful image of picturing that child and really wanting to do right for that child, except that child is within all of us in a lot of ways. So, yeah, right here.
Hi, I'm Lauren Harris. I'm Barbara's daughter.
Oh, right on.
And yeah, my husband and baby and I just recently moved from Los Angeles.
Right on, welcome back.
I'm a psychologist, so with the same field, and this is such a great resource.
Right on. Yay. Oh, we'll talk later. Okay.
And yeah, I have an 18-month-old.
Oh, congratulations.
Starting out on the parenting journey.
Yeah. Your husband must look tired because you look rested, so he must be getting up, and I don't know. Congratulations. That's neat. Yeah, right on. We're just saying who we are and what brings us to maybe be interested in family wellness.
I'm Luna, I'm with George.
Oh, right on.
And this is your speech where you talked last time.
Oh, right on.
here, and it's excellent to be.
Oh, excellent. Welcome.
Other than that, I'm really tired.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. George, what brings you here?
I'm George.
Yeah.
What brings me here? I enjoy listening to you.
Right on.
I get a lot out of your talks.
Cool.
And having two new grandchildren coming soon, so I can get back in the family.
Yeah. Get back, find your groove again. Right on. Excellent. And then back row.
Anne-Marie Bosel, mom of 4, 2 teenagers and 2 not that far behind.
Wow.
I didn't have students, so I know a little more.
Yeah, just who you are. What makes you interested in being at a family wellness event tonight?
He has long, 4 very, very busy days.
Yeah.
Old mom, career life.
Right on. Yeah. Right on. I love it. I like this crowd. Totally. And so I appreciate you guys sharing. Helps me to kind of get a little more connected with who you guys are and what's going on. And also, and tonight, won't just be a presentation like, here's this parenting talk. We're going to talk a bit about parenting, but we're going to talk about just sort of the vision of family wellness and what about it makes sense. And in a way, if we're going to be a family and we're going to be a team and we're going to be possibly involved in family wellness, we want to have a sense of clear vision of what that's all about. So I do want to share a little bit of that. But also, while I'm here, as we discuss things and ask questions, we could be taking all kinds of detours on particular questions that would be on your mind in terms of what wellness is for you guys. So definitely, I come before you as, a therapist and a family wellness dude, and then as a husband and as a father, and I haven't pushed a button on here yet because it's not my laptop. Let me just see. So there's my two kids, Olivia and Petros. Olivia's a foot-knee. And then as I shared last time, I did this thing, I blinked, and that happened. And so that was when Olivia was, I think, a senior in high school. So that's a few years ago, and Petro was, I think, 5th grade or something like that. So then I blinked again, and then there they are now. So Petro's got taller and Olivia got blonder. You know how sorority life can be. So she's a senior at University of Colorado Boulder, and then he is a junior at Monte Vista. As they navigate life, and he has his first job. Ever been to Bridges Restaurant in Danville? Yeah, he's a runner, so he's the token Greek boy there. So he's having fun, like actually working and all that kind of stuff. But I would say as we start thinking about our kids and all that kind of stuff, I'm trying to get it right the first time too, and we're well into the journey. And the longer you parent, the more you realize the mistakes you made earlier on, and so it's an ongoing thing. But from my heart, I kind of try to carry my kids, my wife with me. I mentioned the father too, just in the wellness of my family. I get a call on Monday, one of these, so I'm in session all day, and I get a call from my wife. I usually just put it into voicemail on the first one. She kind of knows that, and if it's something else, I get a second one. But between the first call and second call, her girlfriend called, and it freaked me out. Like, my wife's girlfriend is calling. What's up? It was Jen. I didn't answer that, but I'm thinking I should have answered that. Jen's calling. Why would Jen be calling? And my wife called again, and that's when I answered. And I found out that my father-in-law, youthful guy, went into a procedure that was supposed to be okay, and everything went wrong, and he passed away on Monday. And so, So like every day, like the need for wellness can change, And so, you're in that mode of you hurt for someone else, you have issues of shock going on. In my wife's family, she was like the responsible one growing up, so everything always depended on her. And her parents divorced after 25 years of marriage, and she carried the burden of that. And now since then, 25 years after that, she still has a way of carrying stuff, but her dad was like the one in the family that would carry stuff too. So, I feel for my wife because I know she does what she does, and that is she feels like she has to carry everything. So wellness is an important thing, and pardon me, but so just on a dime it could turn in terms of what comes up, and we want to be, as Father was saying, kind of that community, that hospital, that place where it's like even ER, where even when something happens, are we prepared to be that kind of caring community? So, thank you. I appreciate that, and yeah.
I love the word wellness.
Mm-hmm.
I think it carries very powerful and not only wishful.
Yeah, it's good.
It's a lot more powerful than family happiness.
No, it's really a big point you're making, because even that idea of wellness, and this is where we can have a culture clash, where if we accidentally fall into thinking we want happiness, then it's like, if everything isn't feeling good, then it can't be good. Where wellness is, I could be well in my soul as I'm dealing with the difficulty. Or I come alongside a struggle, and the struggle is not resolved, but I want to find wellness in it. And so it definitely is a topic that, from my heart, even in the condition it's in today, I want to, kind of hopefully cultivate in our hearts the idea of wellness. So idea being, kind of our tagline is face to face, heart to heart. And this idea of face to face, heart to heart, I want to talk about this idea of, okay, so we have face-to-face, heart-to-heart. When you see that, what comes to mind that if something that we're doing is face-to-face, heart-to-heart, what does that mean? What does that bring up for us? Okay. What else? Very good. Yeah, intimacy. Very good. Very good. What else? Anything else? Truth and love. No cell phone. No electronics. I put little horns on it, devil's horns. Okay. Yeah, FaceTime to FaceTime. That's good. Yeah. So even here would be, what kinds of things prevents face-to-face, heart-to-heart? Because that's our other list we want to be aware of. We know what we're for, but we have to be kind of discerning on what can, even inadvertently distract us away from that. Anything else that comes up face-to-face, heart-to-heart? I like that list. Now think about, I wrote an article, I think it's somewhere on our website, on culture, family culture, and what I wrote about was just a little blurb on Greek culture and some of what we think about having Greek culture. Of course, the word food comes in, the word, maybe the concept of like no boundaries might come in. Things like that conjure, maybe loud, and that's part of Greek culture. What I wrote in the article was that, okay, we might know our ethnic thing and we think that's our culture, but really all the same while there's a compelling culture going on in our families, and that's what's the emotional culture of our family. And what I write in the article is I list things like, is the family have a competitive culture? Somebody always has to be right. Or does the family have argumentative culture? Where it's like, oh my gosh, okay, we were just talking, it turned into that. Or do we have a playful culture? Are we a forgiving culture in that emotional culture? Sort of what do we bring to the table? And we even can think about the family table, because very often the culture of the family can show up. Maybe we don't even sit down at the table anymore. Maybe that says something about the family culture. We could have a judgmental or critical culture. So when we think about that, when we think face-to-face, heart-to-heart, we're really starting to think through characteristics of what sets a culture. And so even, hopefully, as you mentioned about face-to-face, heart-to-heart earlier, just you get an impression about that I want us to almost have an instinct, even as we remember this idea of family wellness and face-to-face, heart-to-heart, that it kind of stimulates a sense of, who am I? How am I showing up? If I'm in a relationship and it's face-to-face, heart-to-heart, that's going to function a certain way. And I like this idea of seeing you, or in my heart, and your heart's available, my heart's available. And we realize, as we were sharing earlier, sometimes a relationship lasts so long, we have everything except face-to-face, heart-to-heart. I see you, but I don't see you. Right? And so I like what you're connecting with here. We also say, in the programs Alcoholics Anonymous, it's an amazing program, and they do a lot right. And one of the things they do right is they come up with the greatest little quotes. Like one of my favorite quotes they have is, there is a God and it's not me. Like just remembering that, like, okay. There's one from a country song I like, God is great, beer is good, and people are crazy. Have you heard that one? Anyway, I kind of live by that one too. But anyway, but another saying in AA, they say, principle over personality. Very often, families are driven by personalities. And whoever has the strongest personality wins. Whoever's the loudest gets their way. Whoever cries the most, everybody else gives it, or whatever that is, it's personality driven. And very often, when kids grow up working around a personality, they don't learn principles in life. They actually learn survival skills and usually manipulation, because they have, what personality you have to work around. That's how I'll set my rules. So when we think about these kinds of characteristics, and we're saying face-to-face, heart-to-heart, we're saying, we want to have a family, as well as a church family, where we're surrendering our personality to follow a principle. You might be an expressive person so much so that you take over and get controlling. You surrender that so that you can have a face-to-face, heart-to-heart, and have these kinds of characteristics. Or you might be the opposite, and you hold back, and you zip it, and you don't dare say anything. You have to surrender that and express a little more in order to be face-to-face, heart-to-heart. So I want us to think about principle over personality, so that however we ended up, we go, ooh, family wellness is going to have, a sense of principles to follow. Luckily, we have, biblical principles, principles around holiness, principles around what health and wellness looks like in terms of what does our personhood align with. We have our faith and what we learn there. And we have these characteristics even in our emotional life that can help us say, ooh, I'm going to start getting a sense of how to line things up. One of the things within wellness, too, that we could say, there's something called external locus of control. Have you ever heard that term? And internal locus of control. The idea would be, we're talking about wellness. We like the word wellness. So here I am, dun, 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 and in here I want to have wellness. External locus of control would be my well-being, my sense of being okay, largely comes from something out here. When my day goes well, when my coworkers treat me okay, when my spouse actually is, civil, when my kids actually listen, I can have well-being. What's the problem with that? It's external, and what's the problem with it being external? And what's the problem with that? Okay. What's the problem with trying to find it out there? It doesn't work very well. And so either we're going to be super controlling. So if we go external locus of control, we can get pretty good at that. We get uber controlling, and then we control everybody in sight. Then I might have a good day. And then when they don't cooperate, guess what I get to do? I get to blame them for my lack of wellness. And we can go a lot of years that way. So that's external locus of control. So then, as you had mentioned, internal locus of control is this idea that my well-being largely comes from what's going on in my inner life. And in a way, we'd say family wellness would be, wow, a community where we have an inner life, and within that inner life, it's not this small little space going, ooh, I hope something works in there, that we keep growing, almost expanding our inner life. St. John Chrysostom says, when you find the gate to the heart, that's when you find the gate to the kingdom of heaven. That going into these very humble places on the inside, it almost can become a portal that opens up into, what do I discover within? How do I find wellness in there? How can I say it's well with my soul? So this idea, let's also keep in mind, this wellness within means we are, in essence, having an inner life, and to our benefit, an inner life that has a spiritual life. That's why mental wellness is so connected to our spiritual wellness. The other thing I want to mention about this external locus of control, remember, we go out here for a sense of well-being. So in a relationship, we kind of touched on that. That means my relationship has to function a certain way for me to be okay, which means I am locked in a cage, believing they hold the key. All the while, it's the lock is on the inside. And when they don't throw me the keys, I either get angry enough to want to break out and attack them for not throwing me the keys, or I get disempowered and say, things can't get better for me until someone else changes. So that's kind of a relationship dependency. But let's keep in mind, external locus of control also is the basic, I'm solving inside problems with outside things. It's the basic definition of addiction. And so this is where we see in our youth culture overall, but certainly in our youth culture, what we're seeing, and we'll get to some stuff on our kids in a few minutes, but we're definitely seeing that they're not knowing how to be okay on the inside because they're very stimulated and almost driven to things on the outside. And so they're pretty much convinced by the time they're somewhere in elementary school that they will be defined by and find their wellness by things outside of them. Throw social media on top of that, and now they're doing it in record time, accessing external sources to see if they're okay. So it becomes an addictive relationship, whether it be our kids with electronics or on drugs or sex or relationships. We see that the basics is we lose our wellness because we're not going face-to-face, heart-to-heart, because we're not even knowing how to go to our own heart. Okay, so that's a little bit kind of in way of getting us thinking about this. Now, I'd flip it over the top, but that probably won't work. Maybe, what do you think? I'm going to sell these with autograph later, by the way, you guys. So when we think about face-to-face, heart-to-heart, I want us to think about, in a moment we'll get to this, head versus heart. Before we do that, I want to mention, I liked what Father had said, because it fits. Let me just see if it's on this next slide. Just this idea of how are you? I don't know if I mentioned this little story last time I was here, but it had, in recent months, had come to mind, this little memory I have that had to do with this question of how are you? So tell me if I told you this story. Did I tell you a story of, okay. He knows all my stories, so he knows. This is number 14 on my list. Okay. Okay, cool. I was about 8 years old, so I lived across the bay in the fog of San Francisco, and like in the fog. And my dad was a barber downtown San Francisco. Me and my brother were shoe shine boys. And if we weren't playing baseball, we were shining shoes, and it just was like, it's cool little city life. But we were out by the ocean, and so it was kind of groovy out there. Foggy, cold, but great. But my dad in 1958 bought an acre in Sonoma, and we had this little country place. And, I remember being a kid realizing, gosh, all our neighbors are like Greeks and Italians. And it was back in the old days where, the ethnic people would go find good dirt to plant their tomatoes and their grapes and all that. So we had kind of our country life and our city life. On the way home from, we called it the country, if we turned one way on our street, it means we were going into town to Sonoma. And if we went the other way, it was meaning we were going toward the freeway. So this was one of the times on a Sunday night, sometimes in the summer, it might have been Monday night, because barbers are off on Mondays, and we were going home. And going home that way, there were certain Greeks that lived in the street that way versus the other way. So this way was where Chris Zunas lived. And they lived there full time. Not everybody on our street lived there full time. And we're driving down the street, and we had a 56 Buick, 5 kids, a dog, sometimes 2 goats, so that's a different story. But we're going down the street, and lucky to me, and I'm about 8 years old, 7 or 8. And lucky for me, I ended up having a window. How does the 5th born get a window? I don't know how I got lucky. And so, but that plays into this memory that I had that came to mind like 5 months ago or something. And that is we slowed down because we saw Mr. and Mrs. Zunas walking their, they had a Shetland sheepdog, and they're walking their dog, and my dad slows down, and he rolls down his window, and he goes, Dad, how are you? And Mrs. Zunas goes, good, fine, good, how are the kids? Good, I'm fine. And I'm just watching this, and it wasn't out of the ordinary, but then something happened I'll never forget. And then my dad just leaned out the window a little more and said the exact same words, but differently. And he said, how are you? And Mr. Zunas leaned in and said, not so good, and then went on to say how he's not doing well. And at 8 years old, I encountered the very interesting dynamic around the question of how are you? And I realized there's different ways to ask that. The first one was what? What did that first how are you mean? What's up? Not really a question. And the answer, was the answer really a question? No, it's more of a greeting. The second one, same words, done differently. And I thought interesting how they leaned in. Meant what? What did the second one mean? How are you really doing? What did the second how are you consist of? Invitation, face-to-face, heart-to-heart, interest, right? Engaged. It may even be, it could even be, it's exactly the list you came up with. That it really did involve truth and love and honesty and connection and intimacy and caring and comfort. So kind of in way of us getting more acquainted on this ministry that we could share, Family Wellness Ministry is that second how are you? And that we would be we'd have an emotional culture in our families and in our church life that would be that kind of how are you. When we think of the two kinds of how are yous and what the difference is, and you guys described it really well, the first one skips over, in a sense, skips over the face-to-face, heart-to-heart. The second one zooms right into face-to-face, heart-to-heart. I want to talk for a few minutes about, I'm worried about, I'm going to just grab my phone only because I could realize that it's midnight and that I should have stopped 3 hours ago or whatever. Okay, good. They even bring it in. When we think about face-to-face, heart-to-heart, I want to talk about the heart and something kind of interesting in the world of kind of head and heart. And I think, and I would even say, in all the psychology that I enjoy, in the most simple terms, I'd say I organize it around head and heart. It's not too much different than what is taught in sports psychology. So in sports psychology, which is so fascinating, that like amazing, skilled, stacked, built professional athletes who are amazing every day of the week, that something can happen and they almost become powerless in accessing that talent. What is it that happens to that athlete? What do they call that? Maybe like a slump? What do we know in the world of sports psychology why it is that that athlete went from being the big RBI hitter to popping up 20 times in a row? He's in his head. So the basic premise of sports psychology is when an athlete gets in his head, what happens? It messes with his game. And so if we kind of just take our psychology, the psychology of us, and go, if getting in your head messes with your game, what's that look like for me? When I get in my head, what is that? So I want us to talk about that a little bit. Now think about that. I want us to talk about, we can start with our relationships. When a relationship and a person in a relationship gets in their head, what starts happening? Okay, insecurities. Yeah. What else? Okay. All right. What's that? I didn't hear what you said. Blame, yeah, blame. What was that? Okay, yeah. Look outside, which can involve blame. This is a great phenomenon. I don't know if there's any optometrists here, but there's 20/20 vision when we're in our head on what? On the other person's defects. If you've ever been looking at that person across the table going, do they even realize how much they bug me? It means we're running the experiment. We're in our head. And we could even be in a Safeway line. And we're crawling out of our skin. Oh, now they're chatting. Don't they know I have butter in my hands? Like, it will drive us completely insane. Okay? Road rage. I mean, take your pick, wherever you find yourself, these are the kinds of symptoms. And so we have a lot of intolerance here. When we're in our head, this is super true about sports psychology. So in the world of sports psychology, one of the big slippery slope that leads that athlete to get into his head is he's either thinking about the past, that last awful strikeout, or what else is he thinking about? The future, and he gets into the what if I don't get a hit this time? And even though he may even be saying, oh, what if I don't get a hit this time? Really, if we really examine the deeper thought, what's actually going on is, I'm not going to get a hit this time. So that future tripping may come in the form of a question, but we've already done ourselves in. Okay? So look at that. So when we talk about wellness, we go, ooh, what even affects wellness is, what time zone do we live in? We could have a personality that is like got a lot of nice little attributes to it, but if it's in the wrong time zone, not so pretty. Why not so pretty? Because in the past, we're going to be depressed. And in the future, we're going to be anxious. And when we're depressed and anxious, it brings out insecurities, it brings out resentments, it brings out absolute powerlessness. So this idea of this happens in our relationships. Now, if we'd say we're in our parenting life and we're in our head, what kind of things happen there? Okay, sure. So we could have impatience. Okay, isolation. Okay, so we're not very present. So that may even have a cost to it. What else might be true when we're in our head? What's the main emotion, do you think, when we're in our head, particularly as parents? What's that? Yes, so what I'd even back it up a little bit is fear. When we're in our head, one of the biggest driving forces of being in our head is fear. Interestingly, you guys probably know this word, logismoi, in Greek logismi. The church fathers teach sports psychology long before there was baseball and apple pie and Chevrolet, whatever. The church fathers teach sports psychology.
Wait, so for those of us that don't know.
So logismi is where we get the word logic, which says, the church fathers are saying, be careful when you get in your head. They teach it's driven by two things, fear and desire. Desire? Oh, wait a second. We talked about desire. Desire is when we're driven by saying that what's going to bring me to life is out here somewhere, I'm going to go chase it. That addictive urge means we're in our logismi. We're in our active addiction mode. Or when we're driven by fear, then we're driven by, oh my God, this might happen. I better do my kids' geometry for them. I know that's the right thing. It's going to work. Or whatever that is. But it goes into hyperdrive. We get way out of the present because we're driven by fear. So we get controlling, we get worried, we become over-responsible, we get burnt out. So whether we're talking about our relationship life, we're talking about our parenting life, I don't mind us being a community that understands the difference between head and heart. And at face-to-face, heart-to-heart, we're thinking about, wow, how do we actually function more from the heart? Now, if we're in our relationships and we're in our heart, what can be true about it? What's true about a relationship when you're in your heart? Okay, so there's kind of a caring towards other. What else? Okay, sacrifice. What else is if you're in your heart? Okay, tolerance. Clarity on what? Okay, so we could even maybe say clarity.
Getting to the spiritual part here, I'm sorry, I'm jumping the gun.
Yeah.
When you say heart, I don't mean just the emotion, I mean like the whole 9 yards.
Yeah. So when we're in our heart, we're in our healthiest self. Body, mind, spirit. Okay? Anything else that you think of that happens in a relationship when you're in your heart? Okay, wow. Okay, so love, empathy, giving, okay. Yeah, so not, maybe we could say it this way, not overthinking. Patience? Yeah. So patience goes with tolerance, right? So interestingly, like the word patience and the word empathy are similar words. So pathos in Latin, passionis is where we get the word our suffering. And so empathy is to suffer with. Patience is to have ability to suffer with, right? So, and interesting, the Greek word for passion, which means suffering, is pathos, where we get the word pathology. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Like, okay, what are my pathologies? So we see a sense of, and this is where I'm, kind of rototilling the field a little bit on, so we can kind of plant together this ministry that is definitely, so we know the difference between head and heart. One of the things we'd say about the heart is that we would be a person in their own heart, which then makes us capable of a relationship. Like we're actually available emotionally, because being in our heart is kind of akin to being centered, being kind of okay, even if things are rough. There's a basic okayness to how I am with myself, which means I don't have to take it out on you. Okay? All right. Keep in mind, too, that if we're not in the heart, very often it means not only are we in our head, we could also say we're just in different levels of self-delusion. So I even put bodies here because sometimes we're in denial of what we're really feeling. There's a book out there called The Body Keeps Score. And whatever we're not dealing with emotionally, it ends up in your body. And we might say, I'm going to go see the gastro guy, I'm going to go see my chiropractor. That's all valid, but very often it's what's happening is what we're not dealing with in our heart, because we're not dealing with it, it just goes to a part of our body. Okay? And then we'd say, if we have perished life, let's do this for a second. And then we're going to get into a biblical teaching that is my fave. But if we did head and heart, and we're going to use me, we're in our head, a church that's in their head, what would be characteristic about a church in their head? No growth. What's that? Divided. Oh, you betcha. Yeah, so no family atmosphere, because that family can't be a healthy family, which means it's going to be a divided family. And there might be a lot of families, but probably most of them are hating each other, or something like that, right? So we see that characteristic of what we said about our relationships, and even that 2020 vision. Have you ever had a 2020 vision in church? Totally. there should be some kind of quiz or something in bulletins, just so you keep track of, like, if that person bugs me, oh, for this reason, oh, totally, yep, okay, took inventory, did my part, I don't know, we should do that somehow. Get points, a little bonus star, get a membership club card or something.
I have no idea what you're referring to.
Right? So we could see that, man, we take a trip when we're in our head. We're everywhere but here, right? So we could see that the health of the parish, the health of the relationship, the health of the child, the parenting, all that really comes down to what I want to just say, kind of organizing around head and heart. And that in family wellness, we're saying, man, if we get one thing right, let's be face-to-face, heart-to-heart. Okay, that being said, so that's an active icon right there, right? The parable of the Good Samaritan. There's a lot. If we were in a retreat, I would show that, have you like stand in front of it for 20 minutes, take notes on it, pray, come back, look again, take more notes, because there's a lot going on there. But what I'd like to do is, as you're looking at that, my contacts are so fogged out. Was that Luke 10?
We're reading it on Sunday.
Oh, right on. You guys are going to rock it. Okay. So we know the story. I'm going to read a part of it as you guys look at the icon. So take that journey, kind of picture all that. And we know that Jesus, that lawyer talked to Jesus saying, all this kind of paramata, and he answers this. He says, then Jesus answered and said, a certain man went down from Jerusalem to Jericho and fell among thieves, who stripped him of his clothing, wounded him, and departed, leaving him half dead. Now by chance, a certain priest came down that road, and when he saw him, he passed by on the other side. Likewise, a Levite arrived at that place, came and looked, and passed by on the other side. But a certain Samaritan, as he journeyed, came where he was, and when he saw him, he had compassion. So he went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine, and he set him on his own animal, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. On the next day, when he departed, he took out 2 denarii, gave them to the innkeeper, and said to him, take care of him, and whatever more you spend, when I come, I'll repay you. And he says, which one of these 3 was the neighbor, and he who fell among the thieves, he who showed compassion, or had mercy on him. And Jesus said, go and do likewise. A familiar story. I want us to take just a few-minute journey here and say that if anything about family wellness, this is kind of our parable we've adopted as explaining everything we need to know about family wellness. And as St. John Chrysostom teaches, and many of the fathers teach about this parable, that this parable is, and interestingly, in essence, this is the Christian worldview. And now we have a lot of different Christian worldviews, like really different Christian worldviews. And then, of course, in the world, we have a zillion worldviews. And so it becomes interestingly to us and compelling that, I want to just, is my view right of reality? What is the right world? How do I understand everything in life? And Jesus says, I want to give you guys the lens to look through to understand this is what's going on, people. This is who I am. This is why what's going on for you is going on for you. And this is where we're taking it. This is the Christian worldview found in this parable. And as the fathers teach, that going from Jerusalem to Jericho is that Jerusalem is the holy city, which represents our holy birth as being made in the image and likeness of God. And that is a holy origin for all of us. But in the journey of life, the unexpected happens. What's the unexpected in this guy's story? Thieves. And what do? They beat him up. They drag him in a ditch. It says he's stripped and left half dead. So I want us to take a peek at that. And I think I have. So the human story is told here. The God story is told here. And I think the church story is told here. And if we get some clarity on who God is in here, what's God's work in here, who we are in this story, what's our work in here, where the church is in this story, and what the church's work is in here, then we have a pretty salient worldview and kind of a vision, a shared vision. And one of the things we see very compellingly in kind of the human nature of the story is there's two sides of the road. What did you hear about the two sides of the road? What activity happened on the two sides of the road? Went to the other side. And what was on the other side? Exactly. They left where the something was happening to go to where the nothing was happening because they didn't want to deal with the something, right? And then what was on the other side of the road? The injured man. Okay. And what did the Samaritan do? He went to him, right? So I want us to take a peek a little bit here just on how the devil works. And I want to read, and some of you heard me share this before, but I dig it. So this is a little booklet on the teaching of the Holy Fathers on the Passions. Remember the word passions? That was that pathos. So this is the teaching of the Holy Fathers on our pathology. This is the teaching of the Holy Fathers on what makes us suffer. What the Fathers teach is the things that, you know that little drawing we had where we go out here for life instead of where life is supposed to happen? And we don't have time today, but that's kind of the story of the Garden of Eden. They were given life right in the middle of where they lived, and they found a way to go outside that to look for life. And things got goofed up. Adam and Eve were our first addicts. They went outside to find real life from a source that doesn't offer real life. In essence, like this one author, Deacon Stephen Muse, says, Adam and Eve tried to be like God without God. And so it causes a upside down approach to what it is we're chasing after, and that's the passions. So the Fathers teach about that. So they're saying some things about it written, 2,000 years ago, whatever. And, a while ago, early psychology, amazing. But I want to share this one piece here where it says, after they teach about the passions and how much we're beset by all these sort of wild appetites that pull us every which way, it says the teaching of the Orthodox Church Fathers may be summarized by this parable. By the way, I try to share this parable almost in any teaching I could ever do. That's how much I like it. So you probably have heard it 6 times from me already, but here we go. In the city there was a courtesan. Anybody know what a courtesan is? So it's kind of like a elite, I don't know if this is an oxymoron, but like a high-class prostitute, like a super amazing, popular woman in town. In the city there was a courtesan who had many lovers. The governor came to her and said, "If you promise to be good, I'll marry you." She promised, and the governor took her to his home. But her former lovers said to each other, "That ruler took her to his house. Let's go to the back of the house and whistle for her. Then when she recognizes the whistle, she'll come down." When she heard the whistle, she stopped her ears, withdrew to inner chamber, shutting the door fast behind her. Abba John explains that the courtesan represents our souls. Her lovers are the passions. The governor is Christ, and the inner chamber is the eternal dwelling. Those who whistled are the demons. Behold how this soul took refuge in the Lord. One of the ways we could look at this process of, we know we have deep needs in here, but when we go out here, it's just the whistle calling us to the back door. It says from the Fathers, he even says, let me see if I can find it. St. Jerome's words tell us that the evil one uses a man's passions to destroy souls. The evil one uses our pathology to destroy souls. The evil one will use our anxiety to bring us down. The evil one will use our insecurity to cause us to chase after something. The evil one will use what besets us to bring us down. So when we see this story and what's happening in the ditch, how the devil works, check this out. He used the man's passion to destroy souls. And this man, as the scriptures say, was stripped and left half dead. That's the biblical language, stripped and left half dead. What's the therapy language? Stripped is shame and half dead is compulsions. What do I mean by that? What is happening, and it's really happening in youth culture a lot, but it's happening among us, just deeply within us. It's just epidemic with young people right now, and that is this issue of shame. Shame would be this mix-up between guilt and shame. Guilt is, I feel bad about what I did. Shame is, I feel bad about who I am. That is a huge mix-up, big confusion. So when kids make mistakes, that's why they get suicidal, because they think the thing they did wrong defines them, and they are wrong. The thing they did bad, they want to say they're sorry, except now either they get depressed because they think I don't even deserve to live, or because they feel so bad they get defensive and not want to take responsibility because they feel bad. It gets distorted either way. So shame is that stripping in our story of mankind. It's basically saying we are going to walk the planet with shame issues, with this confusion around our own worthiness, and be really mixed up and end up really defensive or really protected or really hidden or fig leaf or however it goes, because the first family started in shame, and that our situation is just kind of distorted just within that mix-up right there. Well, if I have shame issues coming up and I'm trying to be married and the person says, you know, when you do that, you bug me, and the other person rages back going, I can't believe you're attacking me, because the mix-up goes on from there, or vice versa, back and forth. Because we have this shame issue that confuses us on how to deal with our struggles in a way that feels safe. Is there a place we could deal with our struggles where it could feel safe? Can I be in a relationship and open up about my struggles and feel safe? Because shame is like a nerve that's going to get struck. We want to understand that. The scriptures also say half dead. He's stripped and left half dead. It's a description of our condition. So we have shame issues, and half dead is how we understand compulsions. If you've ever had a compulsion, I'm not asking for volunteers, but if you've ever had a compulsion, you know you're half alive enough to do it and half dead enough to not stop yourself. Welcome to the parable. Welcome to our human story. Welcome to our struggle. So I want to say that in our experience of the church, then we say, can we have a community where it's just a no-brainer that we have shame issues and compulsions, and we don't have to run around faking it. We can say, hey, here's my struggle, can you pray for me? And we could be a community that can talk openly about how we really are. That's what I liked about what you said, like, oh, and my husband, who I hate right now, and da-da-da. It's like, right on, like, and I'm not saying, jump on him, whatever, but I'm just saying, right on, because that tickled me because of the fact that can we be in a place where we can say what's really going on? What do you think about, yeah?
Can you repeat that? Half
Dead, half alive?
Yeah.
So, the guy's in the ditch, half dead, right? So the understanding of addiction and compulsion.
So half alive to do.
Half alive enough to do it, but not half dead.
Let's just take men in pornography.
Okay.
Pretty common combination. I haven't met him, I shouldn't say I haven't met a man yet. Most Christian men recognize that it's like, I know I shouldn't be doing that. They're half alive enough to log on. And they're half dead enough to say, I can't believe I'm doing this again, and I felt powerless. So when we look at recovery in the 12 steps, step 1 is, I'm powerless over X and my life has become unmanageable. If we understand Orthodoxy well enough, we know it is a living, breathing 12-step. It's a living, breathing treatment plan because it talks about our powerlessness and where we need to find our source of life, right? Yep. Now, how does God work? Face to face, heart to heart. Notice what the Samaritan, remember the other guys went to the other side of the road? It said he went where he was. So in theological terms, that's the incarnation. All other world religions is how man can go find God. Our faith is how God love came to find us, meets us where we are. Think about that as a relationship principle. Even on that road we were talking about, who had healthy relationship principles, who didn't. The one who saw the suffering went the other way. Generally, that's not recommended for good relationships. And yet we go home every day and sometimes go the other way. And yet we see that the going there is the incarnation of Christ, and that is the model of what we say in therapy terms, empathy. Someone else is suffering with something, and instead of going the other way or being bugged by it and so on, we go there with compassion. What else did that Samaritan do? He saw him. He went there, saw him. This is another point that I incorporate in my talks. I actually incorporate this because I talk a ton in public schools to parents, and I incorporate this point, the Latin word for disciple. And again, if you've heard me talk, you've heard me, I'll say this every time you hear me talk, if it has anything to do with relationships. The Latin, and Deacon Stephen used that he's a psychologist convert to the church, Presbyterian pastor who is a psychologist who became Orthodox and as a deacon, and he's writing some great Orthodox books, amazing. And he was talking about intimacy, and he made this point, he says that's why we have to understand the Latin word for disciple. And I'm listening, Latin word for disciple, and he said the Latin word for disciple is pupil. And when he said pupil, I went into many flashbacks. My second grade teacher would always call us pupils. And I remember being a second grader going, it bugs me, she calls us pupils. Why in the world does she call us pupils? But she kept calling us pupils, I couldn't do anything about it. So I just figured pupils meant us, students or something, right? And so what Deacon Stephen described is the reason why the Latin word for disciple is pupil is because he was saying, and he was applying this to marriage and intimacy or closeness. And he said the disciple relationship, when there's a mentor-mentee, when there's a teacher and a student, in the true sense of disciple, that close, that kind of relationship, disciple means pupil. Why does it mean pupil? Because that relationship has a pupil-to-pupil relationship. And intimacy is, I feel seen by you, and it's still okay. I feel seen by you, and it's okay. And I'm not at my best, and you see me, and it's still okay. Wow, now maybe we could actually have a relationship. So the idea of pupil-to-pupil, I see you, okay? So the Samaritan also had compassion, he co-suffered, which is what compassion means, right? That passion word again, okay? Now, how God works, and this is a simple point I want to make. We have two sides of the road. I just want to make this point, and it's great being good buddies with Father Nico because he joyfully embraces this. That where God works is on the reality side of the road. What's on the other side of the road? What's the opposite of reality? Like self-delusion. What I find as being a therapist, reality always wins. And we can concoct an amazing self-delusion, how it should be, and how people should be, and how my life, with this and that. And yet, whatever reality is, we've got to work with reality. So when we're a community that's willing to be in reality, and even on the how are you, and even as Father had opened up with that idea when you say how are you, and I had that same thought of how are you, even that is our like, ooh, what side of the road, how am I going to answer that? Like, can I be that person that's in reality, both in my asking and in my answering? There's a great scripture, we won't go into it in detail, but in Luke 7:36 is an amazing little account of Jesus going to a very who's who party, and he was the who's who. And Simon the Pharisee in Luke 7 invites him because Jesus was like the peak of popularity. And so Simon's all, ooh, good, I'm the dude, I have the hot party, and Jesus is the popular guy, he's at my party, and then Simon is all, ugh, gets all, and there's this point in the story where he sees Jesus and this woman at the feet of Jesus wiping his feet, crying, drying it with her hair, perfume on the feet, and it's like he sees it and goes, oh, and this is so interesting what Simon concludes when he sees this activity. This very kind of intimate, special encounter of a woman's heartfelt life at the feet of Jesus. What's Simon say? Oh, he must not be the prophet. Because if he was, he'd know what manner of woman she is. So there's two parties there, Simon's party and the real party. That sinful woman, the woman known to be the sinful woman, which means a lot of things in that culture back then, she was in reality about herself. She was facing where her life was and what was going on for her, and the true honesty about herself drove her to find the true Christ, and that was, in essence, the snapshot of the church. Or we could have Simon's party and have that kind of church. We could have the sinful woman's party and have that kind of church. We could have this side of the road where we're on to doing a whole bunch of stuff, or we can say, hold on, our identity is helping this person, and notice as the story went on in the scriptures, took him to the inn, cast rally resurrection, and said, now, I did a bunch of healings, the Samaritan said. Now what you guys do will be a whole bunch more. Just know, I'm going to come back, I'll pay you back, because you're going to have to put a lot of effort into it. A whole bunch of healing has to go on. You're going to continue the healing. Think about that calling. You are called to continue the work of Christ in healing one another. And so I want us to kind of think through that idea of the reality side of the road. Now, let me ask you guys, pause there. When we think about family wellness and establishing your church on the reality side of the road, when it comes to family wellness, what would you like to see happen? What does family wellness look like here? What do you want it to look like? If we were to brainstorm a little vision of family wellness in end of 2019, going into 2020, and I'm going to play with the 2020 in family wellness and kind of call it Vision 2020 or something like that, you know? Because I want us to have clarity in 2020 on family wellness and the vision for it. I want to hear from you guys. What comes to mind? Where is wellness needed? How do you want that to manifest? Okay. So let me ask it two ways, because you're answering the one way, which is, what are the characteristics of the church that it would be the wellness church? And then I want to hear what kind of ministries would manifest around that. So let's start with characteristics. It'd be a non-judgmental place. What else would be characteristic of the wellness church? What's that? Humility. That's essential, right? Because if there's humility, it means somehow by God's grace we're in our heart. We can't be in our head and have humility. Now, if we have self-delusion, then we can be in our head and have humility. It's called self-righteousness, right? Yes. What else would be characteristic? Growth. Oh, good. So there's just that feeling of like there's something humanly special going on out there, which means the kind of growth would be like, yeah, I want to be part of that. I'm going to come back. I feel welcome. What else? Giving. Yep. Yeah. Really kind of that investment in because I believe in what we're doing.
Comfortable in our discomfort. And what I mean by that is, you be open enough to talk about what we need. I mean, it's catch-22. You need healing, that's uncomfortable to say, but be comfortable enough to say it so that we can get there.
Right, so almost like the idea of when they say, oh, that guy's comfortable in his own skin. It's amazing when someone's comfortable in their own skin, they go, oh my God, I've struggled with that for years. It's like, oh wait, they're comfortable in their own skin, and yet they're authentic and vulnerable. Some other time when I'm here, we'll do some teaching. I want us to talk about some characteristics like vulnerability, the role of vulnerability, how to understand that, because it really is kind of amazingly powerful in our relationships. And we have enough injuries along the way on that road where we've learned that maybe it's not okay for me to be vulnerable. And we just close up, and at best, we might be funny, and closed off. That would be like the best we could do. Because if we're not funny and closed off, we'll be like moody and closed off. But either way, we're closed off. As opposed to what's this vulnerable life like? And we may not be able to be that way because some relationships may not be safe enough for it. But boy, oh boy, we want to foster a community where we find people where vulnerability is okay. That's a special relationship. Those are special connections. What anything else characteristic of?
We need to tell the doctor what hers so that he can.
Yeah. So, right. So, well, and we'd say the doctor being Christ, and yet we find that Christ said, "I'll be back," and so while I'm gone, make sure you're telling each other what you're needing, and so then we have a community that opens up with one another, right? This way, that way. Anything else characteristic? Yeah. Yes. So even the idea of if we don't spiritual health in essence is really similar to sanity. And not having spiritual health is ultimately crazy making. Because we will end up try to be like God without God, or we will try to find life outside of paradise, and something's going to go sideways. So what's even spiritual health look like? So that kind of thing. What would be, so those are good characteristics of that wellness church. What are ministries you want to see happen, like a parent ministry or marriage or this or that? What are ideas that come to mind or on your heart that you say would be wellness ministries here?
This might be, sorry, but I didn't time. This might be something, actually it is something indirectly related, but it could be directly related. I would love to see us, and I don't know if you've seen this in Protestant churches or whatever, but anytime there's an adult education or any kind of adult program in the parish in the evenings, there's also a corresponding child care program. So, I don't know what the answer to that is, but I have gone, or I have heard of parishes, churches, that in order to reach a maximum amount of parents, will set up also a, I don't want to call it a babysitting ministry,
Right.
but in the room right next
Yeah,
door,
yeah.
where the adults are having their discussion. There's young adults, watching the kids.
That's good.
Easier said than done, but
No, that's, but when you start getting a vision for it and then you start organizing around it, St. Basil Stockton, they have family night every Wednesday night. A big old meal. Someone's donated the food for every Wednesday night for a year. And they have family night. And then built in the family night is childcare. And it's kind of like, hallelujah. And then I'll do a few talks over there on their family nights so we get a whole bunch of people talking about marriages or whatever we're going to talk about. But it's a built-in community already functioning with childcare, that kind of thing. So it's interesting how the devil's in the details. So even something like childcare has to be part of the strategy of allowing wellness to happen for parents, or adults, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Good. So parenting ministry, does that resonate? That like doing more parenting things here would be a family wellness goal?
I think like teen and stress.
Okay. So then when you so then we get into things like teens and stress and mental health. Then we have a beautiful we have parenting stuff. We want parents to understand how to handle our kids' anxiety and stress and how to decode that. Maybe we even have some events where young people we could have a few little somethings around understanding when stress shows up for them, that kind of thing. Okay? What else comes to mind for family wellness?
Along that same line, not just for parents, but, for the teens.
Suicide. So everything from, the way that stress manifests for them, everything from suicide to cutting to, the cutting is a trend you've probably heard about, right? Where they take razor blades and do very, very little, they'll end up having 50 cuts eventually. What's really big is when you see kids, and you see this like on a hot day and this kid's wearing a hoodie, that usually is coded as they're a cutter. And why do they cut? very often what's happening in the trends is that so it happens a couple ways. One is they're in emotional pain, and so to create physical pain feels relieving to them because it helps them like say, I'm gonna feel it now. Helps them like contain pain. And other young people are in so much pain they feel numb, and it's driving them crazy that they're numb, so to create pain gives them relief. And there's a weird like euphoric relationship that happens, and they get kind of addicted to it. So just as a little, I'm going off a tangent a little bit, but just saying the ways in which stress manifests in young people, we want to understand it and help them. Yeah. Yep.
We have a men's group, maybe once a month. I would like to see that expand.
Good.
I think men as an elder need more opportunity to open up.
Yeah.
And we're not very good at that.
Right.
And I think these safe, comfortable gatherings, I think if we just keep doing that, it's a basic program we need to be.
So maybe even within the men's ministries, we have a little bit of a wellness mindset to say, are we creating a space and maybe asking questions where they can open it up, and do we know how to guide that, direct that? Exactly. So this is where we want, as we're coming into 2020, by God's grace, and Christine is, I think, have been super helpful to me, kind of my point person for your community. So however you guys want to discuss those things, so that you guys start putting together, like, hey, what if we had a parent talk, once a month or once every other month, and off month we did a marriage talk, or what should we target in the men, when do they meet, what can we do? Maybe we start putting some ideas together. I'm local, so that's kind of good thing, right? I've got other team members not so close, but we hope to be doing these things, up and down the metropolis. We are putting together, we just did some training. There's a marriage theory research called EFT, emotionally focused therapy. It's good stuff. They put together a program called Hold Me Tight, and it's connected to what's called attachment theory. They did a bunch of research on babies and their need for attachment. I'll show you videos sometime. We have it in our presentation. It's funny, these psychological these things, they're almost not cruel, but there's this one where they have these like 3 babies, different clips in high chairs, and they have dads that are engaged with them. And then the babies in the high chair, and then they're reaching for each other, sweet. What the experiment is, then they have the dad who's been doing that, all of a sudden, and the baby's used to that, all of a sudden just go, turn, and then come back and not move. And then the baby goes, stoic. Baby squirms, and all these different sort of research things happen. Like the baby then reaches for the poodle down there, like somebody attached with me, and they check back with dad. Dad's still this way. And then ultimately the baby tries to squirm out, like, get me out of here. Screams, cries, upset. It does it like with 3 different babies, 3 different dads. And it's just showing what the research in what's called attachment theory, all the different ways we go. Some people shut down, some people scream, some people reach for other things. Some people demand it. So the research in emotionally focused therapy is that all that attachment stuff with babies applies to our marriages. And sometimes the spouse does the turn, and what do we focus on? Maybe not the poodle, maybe we spend 15 years on our kids. And then we turn back going, nope, they're still not there. Okay, I'll volunteer. Or something, right? All of those attachment dynamics. So anyway, in that kind of research, super interesting. They put together a program, but then they said this Hold Me Tight program. Sue Johnson is the researcher from Canada. And they put a program together for couples to understand their attachment and the need for connection. Then they said, okay, there's a bunch of Christian couples out there. Let's take this Hold Me Tight program and like christen it a little bit, and that's called Created for Connection. So then we christened it in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, and we have it more Orthodox style. So we've put together that program. And our main guy that's been trained is on my team, Josh Ensley. He's a MF, marriage therapist up in Seattle. And he and I, and Father Tom Sagalaki, and a few others on our team have been getting trained in that presentation. So we hope that in 2020, that would be something that we can roll in here and have some kind of Saturday, Friday, Saturday, or something like that for couples that want to learn about the created for connection thing. So that's kind of an example of like, right on, let's multiply this, right? And then the other thing I'd say is there's plenty of OCA churches and Antiochian churches and Serbian churches and Russian churches that aren't coming close to this just out of not the funding and anything else. So I would love for us to be as pan-Orthodox as possible, that anything we're opening up here for family wellness, we might think about our brothers and sisters, Orthodox brothers and sisters who sort of have to struggle on their own and that type of thing. So let's keep that in mind. So that'd be an example, what I shared, with what went on with my wife and her father. Then I know there's someone in the church that does grief share. And so we want the community to find out what are the needs there, if it's grief and that kind of recovery. I've got a couple of slides on, I was going to say a couple things about our kids. Let me get back to that. But we also have a whole program on divorce called Divorce Care. Again, fortunately for us, locally, a guy that I trained, he was one of my volunteers. So I ran a recovery program in a big old mega church, evangelical mega church here in the East Bay years ago. And he had gone through a divorce, this guy, Joe, great guy. And he ended up running my program, great program. It's a video series, great program called Divorce Care. And when I had my team of volunteers, and so when you have a team of volunteers, you get to know them. So anyways, just as God would have it, he wanted more healing, and so long story short is he's been an Orthodox Christian for years now, and he's on our team here for Family Wellness, and he's remarried, and it's like a lot of healing has happened in his life. So he's my go-to guy on divorce care, and he works a day a week out of my office, and so if ever the community wanted a program for divorce, or let's say you talk to other Orthodox priests in the East Bay, and you decide, let's have it in Concord, whatever, it's available, right? And then for those who have been through divorce and want to be lay leaders, then that's great because it practically runs itself. It's all self-contained with the teaching on the video, and we modify it a little when it gets a little too evangelical in one little part, and we kind of calm that down a little. But anyway, so that's an idea for family wellness. That's the Created for Connection, 7 conversations for a lifetime of love, and so it has these 7 components in that weekend. So this is what we've created. We're going to work on it at St. Basil's, but it's already happening at. I'll be doing my 4th men's retreat down in St. Paul's, Irvine. So I've gotten to know those guys, and now they have every other week Thursday, and we have a certain format with that. So if you want any consultation on what possibilities can go with, or if you want to adopt it and call it, hey, let's call it Real Life Men's Groups. So even by the title, it kind of builds the culture a little bit that we're talking about real life, right? And then we're just talking about what we're saying here. And then, and what you guys are saying, and I think we're in kindred spirit here, is that we'd be a community that goes there, that sees each other with eyes to see, and we have compassion. So how do you guys want to, we're getting toward the end of time. How about we open it up? In fact, I think my last slide is you guys. Let me think. Oh no, there's that. There you guys are. What's on our minds? Anything else we want to ask? Yeah.
1 in 6 American adults is on antidepressants right now. And it's like soared since 30, 40 years ago.
Yep.
The number of millennials and teens, I just read this article today actually, the numbers of millennials and teens also has soared, and even more recently, I want to say it grew by 50% since 5-6 years ago. I am sure, I have no doubt in my mind that you're seeing this all over.
Yep.
And I wanted to ask, so I'm sure there's any number of things that we could throw out for what we believe is the cause, but I guess when I read this, I wasn't completely surprised. I think it is telling about, and this isn't a conversation about do we medicate something right away or not, or what the value is of medication versus therapy or prayer or whatever else. It's not about that. But honestly, I just, reading these kinds of things, and you as a therapist,
Yeah.
counseling people who are going through this, and I'm sure sometimes they might have a struggle that requires this. Other times, who knows? But I wanted to know, the question as I'm saying is coming out like, I don't believe medicine is bad.
Right.
But I wanted to ask, what's your opinion, you, George, Papa George,
Yeah.
as to what is causing this phenomenon?
Mm-hmm.
And what do you see in your practice?
Mm-hmm. I think the way I'd answer that,
Anxiety, depression.
right.
About,
I think the way I'd answer that is, I think we've lost healthy connection. And so the more disconnected we get, and that's what's so unique about social media is it's hyper connection, but without necessarily getting satisfying connection.
Sterile, right?
It can be a lot of things. I mean, it could be sterile, or it could be in living color. Like it could be a lot of things. But it ends up being more of the addictive in the head kind of connection. And I think we're losing our ability to connect from the heart. So I would say that a lot of what you described is symptomatic and interesting. We think about how it's said that the enemy uses our pathologies to destroy souls. Mm-hmm. We think of diabolos, diabolos, the one who divides. So the devil's work is dividing us. So I think the source or the core or the story goes back to, I think we've been divided in a bunch of ways and divided from ourselves. And I even think that's why we have to be careful with having a healthy church and a healthy theology, because sometimes accidentally there's plenty of churches that divide us through shame from our own sexuality or our own sense of like, this is what's going on for me. And so we keep slicing and dicing. Yeah. So I think that we are not okay. So I would say probably the simplest way I'd say it is I think we have a worthiness problem. I think we're really injured and hurt and confused on how we get our sense of worthiness. And everything we chase after is the appetite for trying to gain some worthiness. And then when we don't successfully find worthiness, and very often because we're going out there instead of learning how to have it in here, then you get medication, you get all kinds of things that just try to at least target the symptom because people aren't knowing how to get to the cause. So I would even say from that standpoint, a church community, and I'd even say we're talking family wellness, but I think we could be talking all at the same time about outreach and evangelism. I think this could be the exact same conversation. I think we need to have a strategy on how to reach people. I think sermons need to have a kind of family wellness lens or language to it. I think it needs to include, my favorite part of liturgy from the time I sort of came back to Orthodoxy years ago was when the priest comes out and what does he say? Forgive me, the sinner. That was like this one moment when I said to myself, oh, there's a place for me here. Because if he's asking for forgiveness of his sins, then maybe I could belong. But that's just a little powerful, beautiful moment that sets a tone of the culture, that it's a safe culture where we ask for forgiveness. But how can we do that in how our bulletin looks? How do we do that in how we greet one another? How do we do that in how we teach things? So I think worthiness is been ravaged and distorted, and we're kind of looking for love in all the wrong places, and we get left with a bunch of symptoms of dissatisfaction.
See, I'm glad you said that, because I totally agree with you with the worthiness thing and everything. And one would think that given the fact that has always been a core message of our faith is how worthy, well, unworthy in one sense, but obviously worthwhile,
Yep.
worth God's time, worth God's love.
Yep.
We are. And how we are valuable in His eyes, we're loved like children, I mean, exponentially, the prodigal son, all these things. And I gotta believe that, we're not immune to today's society with opposite messages. We are, not so much this or that or whatever. And I think a lot of this anxiety and depression that I see from kids and teens and stuff, and I'm sure you do too, comes from, untethering ourselves from our faith. Not to say that we who are in the church and trying to practice our faith are perfect or immune to these things by any means, but I think somehow, some way, we're losing that message of, the worthiness, or however you want to couch it,
Well, I would,
valuable.
so I would, let me say this. If I'm Joe Blow back here, and I'm standing here trying to figure out what's going on, I'm hoping that there's some kind of radar in all our systems that says, what's that guy going to end up with by standing here for 67 minutes? Like, what's he going to end up with? I want us thinking about that. Because I think that the thing that ends up happening is we have the treasury, we didn't know that we put a passcode on it. And Joe Blow doesn't have the passcode. And so that's where we can actually find some frustration to say, we've got the goods. Is it translating? And is it translating to the outer circles? We in the inner circle get it, maybe. What happens in the outer circle? So to have a heart for that, I think, is the guy in the ditch. Otherwise, we could run our liturgies on the other side of the road with people who aren't visibly bleeding. I want us to almost can we sit with that? Can we pray about that? What would be different if we're a little bit more about the go there, see, and have compassion? What comes out different? How do we behave? Who do we notice that we don't know around us? Do we greet them? Or whatever form that takes. What does see him, go there, and have compassion? How does that manifest? That's when we start saying we're really serious about family wellness, or that we want to be a healing community. The other thing I'd say on that is one of the weirdest forms of insanity happens in two places. And it's the worst sort of occasions in a way. It happens to be the two places where love is supposed to be. It's exactly where love's supposed to happen. It's where we're supposed to get love right. What are those two places? Yep. And church. And if you interview people, you find out where they've been injured the most in a way that doesn't get so easily healed. It's when love goes wrong in family and church. So when love goes wrong in those places, it's crazy. When somebody's judgmental in church, it's crazy. When a parent criticizes a child, it's crazy. Its source of love is not being loving. That's like a punch in the stomach. That's like a stab in the back. Then we feel it in ways that takes our breath away. And we think, oh, and if we stick around, then for sure we're crazy. So, that kind of thing, when he takes, he heals the guy, or he starts the work and then takes him to the inn. What if the inn was like this Greek country club? Ella, ella, katze, oh yeah, I want a cigar. Whatever, it's like maybe a friendly place, but then they ignore the bandages and go, well, we're just going to hope that heals. We have a golf tournament later, that's fine, whatever. But imagine that story would be such an odd story if we had the means to create skits or video images of that and then played it out that in being 5 different versions. And one of them was an ethnic inn, one of them was a macho inn, and one of them was a gossipy inn, and one of them was the healing place. It'd be interesting to play that out. Right? So I think that where we are is where we could do our work, but but that mindfulness around, what are we doing when we're present in this place or in Bible studies or even when, even being a Christ community, one where some of our vulnerability and authenticity is saying, I'm struggling actually, whatever, I'm struggling in my faith or I'm trying to ask God to help me, but I'm not letting him, or whatever that is, where Christ is in the conversation. That says something about the community. So all to say, when it comes to things like the struggles people have about worthiness, we can't fall for all the shiny, happy faces to think, oh good, we can all just kind of be surfacey and it's all okay. We don't want to fall for that. Any other comments or questions? What's this feeling like for you guys, this kind of conversation? Is that?
It's really just incredible because I think we get into conversations that don't happen in dinners and visits and things. Because, you lead us into the points, and it's so rich what we have, and we don't always appreciate it or see it,
Yeah.
or go through it,
Mm-hmm.
or have compassion.
Yeah, no, right. And some of the research they do on church growth research is that they say churches that grow have small groups, like home groups or small groups and that kind of thing. So that's another discussion, maybe series of whatever, to say, because people live in different locations. What would it be like for certain families to get together once or twice a month in someone's home, have maybe a little bit of an outline to discuss maybe one little discussion question, but it elicits the more intimate setting for a little bit more guided, but that type of thing. So there's different considerations we can make around how we cultivate the community as being a community from the heart.
But being guided is sort of, it gives permission to say something that
Yeah.
you weren't comfortable saying.
That's right.
But you gain
Yep.
enough comfort
Yep.
that you can.
Yep. Yeah, and then even on a bigger scale like this, what we in our field call psychoeducation, which is when there's a teaching about something, sometimes that's a safe setting, come y'all, and yet it then becomes a place where even though it's safe and everybody's learning something, and then it turns into something a little bit more intimate like what we're doing. And so there's good, there's good strategy in that, whether it starts out as a parenting talk, but then it turns into, a little more therapeutic than that, or creative for connection about marriages, and then you realize, wow, we're here, we need to work on our stuff. That says a message, but it also says we're a church that's going to offer things that guides people toward the well, if you will.
And I love wellness.
Yeah, right on.
I love that.
Yeah,
love that
good.
word, Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think William Saroyan said the greatest happiness in the world is not believing you need happiness.
Right. Totally.
So wellness is really
Yes.
the right
Yep.
word for opposite.
I had a kid. Do you know where Ruby Hill is? Have you heard of Ruby Hill? You know where Blackhawk is? Yeah. So I work in Pleasanton, and so it's really interesting when I work with Ruby Hill kids and Blackhawk kids. There's a certain demographic, right? So Ruby Hill is a newer, super luxury gated community in Pleasanton. And so I was talking to a Ruby Hill kid. And the reason I call him Ruby Hill kid is because he was like, in fact, his high school is called Amador. He's Mr. Amador. They have this thing. Anyway, the greatest kid in high school, I saw him when he returned home after his first year at a very top-notch university. Did great the first semester, almost flunked out the second semester, and came home horrifically depressed. He came home and said two things. I love this kid. He says, I realized a couple things. He said, I'm an accounting major because both my brothers studied accounting and my dad's an accountant, and we live in Ruby Hill, and so I was told that this is the way to have that kind of life. And he says, I hate accounting. And then the second thing he said was, I was always told that college is the best years of your life. And I got to college and it didn't feel like the best years of my life. And so I got depressed. So the point that's making is that he illustrated that that you're saying there, that we don't know how to be sad. We could be okay and be sad. Our generation doesn't know that. Our generation is told that you have to be a 10 out of 10, not only be a high performer all the time, but feel super great about it. So they don't know how to feel kind of meh. And to learn how to be okay in that space is wellness. So we live in a feel good, feel good, feel good culture. And there's a lot of resources to feel good. And with legalization of marijuana, I'm not saying I'm against it, whatever. I'm not making a stance on that right at the moment. But I'm just saying there's a lot of resources that if you don't feel good, you can take something or do something to feel good, but it only feeds the beast that they don't know how to be okay when they don't feel good.
But the culture teaches us or tells us to feel good superficially.
Yeah, right. Like whatever feel good means.
Right.
And then there's kind of an unspoken understanding.
And very superficial, very, very thin layer
Yeah.
instead of delving
Yep.
more into the.
Well, I joke a little bit about Kardashians, a little bit, nothing against them, but that show is remarkable in that, talk about feeling good at a superficial level. It's like be famous for no reason. Like, so like superficiality is really in right now. It's really trendy. So there's a big mix up in youth culture around that, right? So all that said, we need to wrap it up and I need to get home, but so do you. But I like you guys.
We like you.
And I'm saying that joking, but meaning it. But it's face to face, heart to heart. We're pulling it off. We did some face to face, heart to heart. Doesn't it feel better that way?
Absolutely.
So when we can get our creative juices flowing on what we want that to look like, in what way we want to start that, in what way, if it, how does that show up with men, how does it show up with parenting, whatever. And also, can we have that lens and maybe review every ministry in the church and say, if we had a wellness lens, what do we do there? How do we tweak it maybe?
There's another factor here that I think I would like to bring out, that we are starting to take major step about changing our location and
Yeah,
all that.
yeah.
So we have an incredible challenge ahead of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that, I think, requires us to address what we talked about tonight more and more.
Well, when we think about church location, building, or going to a bigger community or whatever, man, I mean, that fires me up because then we're saying, from a family wellness perspective, we're talking marketing that like crazy. Just from a marketing perspective, how the church brands itself. That it's not just some, because you got to be careful having a title Greek Orthodox because it might as well be Korean Presbyterian. And people go, I'm not Korean, I'm not Presbyterian, so bye-bye. So how do we brand that? In what way does family wellness language or programs or identity go out before the messaging of where the church lands and what it's about? And that's where we can go to town on being really kind of hitting the target of where people are at and what they're looking for.
And outreach.
All that outreach, but in a way of saying, if you have a preschool, do you have parenting classes for all those parents? Do you know who those parents are? Well, that's outreach right there. So there's just ways in which we think about it. We've got to look through that lens of outreach, but with a wellness, compassion, go there, see them, have compassion kind of mode. Yeah. So.
And I feel there is a lot of unchurched people that we have the responsibility of reach out to.
Yep.
Because go to the other side of the street.
Yep.
You need to go to those people
Yep.
who are suffering and see them
Yep.
and invite them.
Yep. Well, keep in mind, I'll close with this, is just even on the outreach, there's people who probably haven't been to church in 5 years that are part of the community, and they stopped for a reason. And is there a way in which we can think about that, pray about that? Is there a way that becomes a certain mailing list where they get a certain mailer that says, love you, we're having this coming up, would love to see you, or something. So there's that other, there's a lot of others out there at different degrees. So we'll be mindful of that. So I'll have, Father, would you close our time with a prayer?
Any other questions? George and Christine, thank you.
Yes,
very, very much.
right on. Yes, right on. Thank you, Christine. Right on.
All right. In the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Lord is my strength and my song. He has become my salvation. This is the day which the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. The Lord is God and has given us life. You are my God, and I will give thanks to you. You are my God, and I will extol you. I will give thanks unto the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever. Amen. Through the prayers of the Holy Fathers of Jesus Christ our God, have mercy on us and save us.
Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone.
All right, guys. God bless. Thank you. Thank you. Microphone up front.
Oh, yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Right on, dude. Thanks. Thanks for being part of it, too.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's great.
It's
Real
good.
quick, kind of confidential before.
Yeah, hold on.
you
This is the microphone.
Oh,
Hold on
yeah,
one
good.
second.
Good.
Georgie. Yeah.